In security misconfiguration, it's a topic that's not very technology specific. I mean, this can really happen with any of the web application tools or frameworks out there, and it can almost definitely happen if somebody is building their own authentication and authorization mechanism instead of using something that's more commonly available. And what this really means is that anytime a tool has a capacity for security configuration, there's of course also the opportunity to get that config wrong. And if you think about it, there's no web application that's really just suppose like a standalone web page. It's really usually a whole stack of technologies that is involved with hosting a web application, including the data layer, like suppose a database or maybe an API. There's the hosting server, which actually sends you the page. There's probably some kind of a gateway in front of that figures out where you're trying to go when you enter a URL into your browser. So there's usually a few places for things to go wrong. And that is exactly why something like this can be a top 10 vulnerability. Sometimes people will use more features than are necessary. Suppose something like Apache, a popular web server, might have a lot of things available by default that people who are installing Apache on their servers to host a simple website might not even know about. And maybe they have file uploads enabled and they really don't need to. Or they have certain pages available, like an admin page in some kind of a wiki package or something that's exposed publicly but was never meant to be, or maybe something like a CMS, any of these packages that people really just want to install and move on with their day, and they don't look through what the security configuration should look like. And one of the issues here is that sometimes things don't have secure defaults. Sometimes things are meant to be development friendly, and anytime that something's development friendly, there's always the risk that people will develop and deploy quickly, but they'll never go through the security hardening, as it's known. And what that means is looking at an application or a platform and trying to shut it down as much as possible ahead of it being exposed to the public internet or even to internal users. And so, kind of turning off all the unnecessary functionalities, closing ports, removing access to pages that shouldn't be accessible by regular users. And so all of these things can cause attack vectors. And that's why having such features enabled, especially when these are enabled by default and nobody goes through and does a sweep of them, it can be dangerous. Another problem is when we have software that is no longer up to date. And this is similar to the components with known vulnerabilities issue. And here the issue is that if we have something that's using an old protocol, like suppose we have something that's using an old version of SSL, or it's using old encryption algorithms in how the security is being handled, how the hashing of the passwords is happening, and so many other kind of moving pieces of a modern web application. If the application is relying on old technology for its security mechanisms, it's very likely that somebody out there has already figured out a way to break those mechanisms to get in without authorization. And so having out-of-date software is part of security misconfiguration and can be a big problem. A lot of the famous breaches that you hear about actually happen because of this issue, because some software with known vulnerabilities was never locked down, some settings were not changed, and it was left vulnerable longer than it should have been. And this is something that goes hand in hand with these two things, which is that sometimes there's settings in certain software packages, whether it's servers, application frameworks, or anything else to do with web applications, where the settings that it comes with, if you just turn it on and let it go, those settings are not the secure ones. They're the ones that are meant for almost like a demo mode or a quick start mode. And in order to have settings be more secure, and you can think of something even like your Wi-Fi router, sometimes it'll come with something like admin as the admin password just so someone can get in. And sometimes it'll be a password that's written in the user guide. So it's always the same password for every single router that comes out of the factory. Those are not secure settings. So if you suppose turn on the Wi-Fi and connect it to your network, then somebody who's going by can see that and they can just get in because they'll see, oh, this is that kind of a router, so it must have this kind of default password. And so this is a case of security misconfiguration.